Welcome to the Experimental Honesty podcast. I'm Brian Curtis. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Ashley Greenwell. Ashley's a licensed clinical psychologist. She's the founder of the group practice Greenwell Psychology and Consulting. Ashley is a nationally certified healthcare ethics consultant by the American Society of Bioethics and Humanities. And Ashley holds an incredibly special place in my life. She was one of my former clinical supervisors during my doctoral training in clinical psychology, and she was one of the key people who really ignited my ongoing passion for mindfulness-based psychological treatments, so-called third wave cognitive behavioral therapies, and in particular, acceptance and commitment therapy and dialectical behavior therapy, which we'll talk more about during our conversation. Ashley is one of the most competent and compassionate clinicians and people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting, and so it was great to chat with her today. You can learn more about Ashley and her work by visiting greenwellpsychology.com. And as a reminder, you can start your free 2-week trial of the Experimental Honesty app by going to experimentalhonesty.com. If you're interested in learning and practicing many of the science-based skills that Ashley and I will talk about today during our conversation to help you build more honest, open, authentic lives within a community of people like us who are interested in this stuff. So it'd be great having you as part of our growing experimental honesty community, if this sounds like it might be for you. Okay, let's talk to Ashley. I am here with Dr. Ashley Greenwell. So Ashley, thanks so much for taking the time to chat today.
So happy to be here.
I'm going to go over your background a little bit. You tell me how I do. So you're a licensed clinical psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, you are the founder of the group practice Greenwell Psychology and Consulting. That's greenwellpsychology.com online. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're also a nationally certified healthcare ethics consultant, and that's by the American Society of Bioethics and Humanities. And with that, you provide expert consultation services, both for private practices and organizations. You also, I think you still serve on the Utah Psychological Association's Ethics Committee, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
You teach at the University of Utah. And the crown jewel of everything you've done is you were my former clinical supervisor, right?
Tell everybody I meet, first thing that comes out.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you were Brian's clinical supervisor. Yeah. So I will say that was one of the highlights, not just of my career, but of my life, is getting trained and working with you. And so, yeah, it's a pleasure having you. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. To that point, it's really beautiful to see. I mean, so many of the people I supervise are off doing these amazingly meaningful, social change-oriented things in the world. Every once in a while, I get a little feeling of like, oh my gosh, I need to be doing more. But it's I can sit here and be grateful for what they're doing.
Yeah, I think from that list I just described, that's not really touching all that you obviously do. So yeah, I think you're doing some
I'm
stuff.
hanging in there. Okay.
You're hanging in there. Yeah, let's maybe start a bit with, I guess, your background. So on the website, you were raised as a bicultural daughter, right, of a Mexican mother, a Kentucky-born father. Then I realized I don't actually know where you were born. Where were you born?
It's sort of an interesting story. I was born in Indianapolis, Indiana, but I was raised in about 5 different states. So, to that point, it's interesting. We, in hindsight, we can kind of make sense of why we ended up the way we ended up, or the paths we picked. But I do think that there was something about being exposed to these really strident, divergent viewpoints from a very young age, where my brain, the experience of a Mexican immigrant is very different in some ways than Kentucky-born white male. Mm-hmm. And they were both very opinionated humans. So to put it kindly, so that there's me being a little psychologist at a young age, trying to understand what is this conflict. Right?
I don't think you got those opinionated genes. I think that might have been recent. And so I don't know this either. Do you have brothers or sisters, or are you the only child?
I'm the middle child, Brian. Yes, I'm the middle child. And, it's interesting because when you look career-wise, I've recently been wondering, I decided I was going to be a psychologist in the 6th grade. So I took a
Oh,
psychology class and I said, okay, this is it. And I pretty much stayed locked into that. And it's only recently that I've actually kind of wondered, the space you've occupied around peacemaker and understanding dynamics and facilitating compromise and progress. Like, what if what if I go study primates? I don't know. Like, what if I go study botany?
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think that is another part of my personality, is just like the curiosity of like, let me have a little this, a little this, a little this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know since 6th grade. I do remember though. So you have siblings. One story that you did tell me back at UCBT, Utah
Uh-huh.
Center for Evidence-Based Treatment, where we were, is I think your dad's opinion on your education. And in particular, there was the BS, the MS, and the PhD degrees.
Yeah.
I just love it. I don't know if you're comfortable sharing that story, but I personally love it.
Sure. I mean, when you talk about being able to integrate really different ways of seeing the world. So I have family with on that side with roots in Alabama and in Kentucky. And one thing they used to say, yeah, sure, is like a BS is bullshit. I don't know what kind of
Mm-hmm.
podcast this is. An MS,
It's you can say
you can say that.
bullshit.
Okay, MS is more shit, and PhD is pile high and deeper. And clearly, you and I have big mounds of bullshit compared, according to some
We're deep in
opinions.
it.
That's
Yeah.
true. And and I, for me, the way the place my mind goes is there is a kernel of importance and validity there, right? That real life earned experience is profoundly important.
Yeah.
And yet, I sure love formal education. I'll do more of it, right, if I can.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was with my dad too. I mean, his father they were bricklayers working on the farm. My dad was the first one to go to college in his family, and his dad was, that was getting out of work, right?
Yes.
To go get an education. And so I had that similar, with him. He was very proud of that, but he also had to kind of, take some grief for trying to get that education, but balancing those two of there is learning, but then how do you apply that to daily life? Can you learn from both of those things? But yeah, when you told me, I was like, oh, that sounds exactly like the stories my dad used to
Yes.
say. So yeah.
Is that Utah culture, or where?
It is. Yeah. I was born and raised here in Utah. So yeah, that was him. And so, yeah, I mean, growing up, it sounds like you traveled around a lot, and then you did kind of the same thing with your education, it looks like, right? So you kind of moved across the country. We don't have to go into terrible detail, but can you kind of walk us through how that happened? So from schooling to then going to college and how you ended up where you ended up?
Sure. So I started school at University of Michigan and was really studying a form of social cognitive psychology that was not very applied. And I thought, it's not great for me. Also, I'm not going to join a sorority. I said sorority. Maybe that's what they
Florida
are now.
sorority. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I thought, let me leap out and get to the great outdoors. And that's where I went to University of Washington and started doing research with Dr. Marsha Linehan, who developed dialectical behavior therapy. And that was very applied, right? In kind of like the grittiest way. There's a videos that she would show where people are literally in true crisis, self-harming in the session, right? Like, what is more emergent and important than that? And then what do you do? So I studied that for a bit, and then one of the things you and I have talked about is this sort of learner's mindset around there's so many different beautiful psychological treatments. So that was a little bit of DBT, and then I learned a little seeking safety, and then I learned so some of these mindfulness-based third wave CBT approaches, and then you add more and more in as you train.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I had somehow forgot that Marcia was your honors advisor there. And so, but I mean, what was that experience like? I mean, you said like you're seeing things in crises. Did you set out? Because PTSD was a big focus in your doctoral work. Did you set out to work with something like third wave and borderline personality disorder, or how did that come about?
I want to be really honest here, and I think that
Uh-huh.
probably fits with your
A little bit, yeah, yeah.
whole thing. I could probably weave together a really coherent narrative, but I think that the reality of it is that we sometimes stumble into things. And I
Absolutely.
knew to get into a PhD program, I need to have an honors thesis. And so I walked into the office, and the person, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just wanted the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. And the person coordinating the program had said, well, Marsha Linehan's assistant just walked out of here and she said she wants a student. You want to do that? And I said, okay.
Yeah.
So I bumbled into it, Brian.
Yeah, but that's, I
Yeah.
mean, when I look back, I think I've mentioned it like twice now in, interviewing folks like honesty researchers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For me, my whole career in sleep medicine, that was a result of an REM song about circadian rhythms. When there was a work study opportunity, I didn't want to do it. And I
Oh,
was like, oh,
wow.
circadian rhythms, I've heard that word. And then that got my foot in the door and completely changed my life. And in grad school, I was like, well, I want training kind of at the extremes. I want to be able to know what I'm doing and to be able to help regardless of who comes in. And so UCBT, Sheila, DBT, I was like, well, I'm going to throw myself in. I had no idea. Like
Yeah.
mindfulness, that concept, I would have just probably laughed at it or rolled my eyes.
Yeah.
And it was the perfect fit for me and what I wanted to do. And it opened up this whole avenue. But when I'm truly honest with myself, that was not intentional. I don't take credit for that. It's just, I think you put yourself in situations, and if something grabs you, like for you, it sounds like you ran with it, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that and maybe this is part of the upbringing, but this idea of like, you gotta be adaptive. You need to have a certain skill set to face what's in front of you. There's got to be that grit, and I do think I'm naturally drawn to therapies that give people skills, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking about that more and more because I see these currents where the world is so hard and we're overwhelmed and overstimulated and all these things, and I think there's a very authentic drive for comfort and ease, and as I grow as a therapist, I can notice that pull in session that I could soothe this human and just say the things and do the things that for the next 40 minutes, 45 minutes
Mm-hmm.
calm them. But I don't think that serves them. And so a lot of these therapies like DBT and so on, where you're sort of saying like, no, let's get in the muck and let's get some skills for hard things. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they just feel more relevant than ever.
And that's completely my experience too, is you can
Mm-hmm.
sit with it and there's a skill set to that, to be able to hear it and to nod. I find myself, it's almost fighting back from not being like, and you can balance change with things like acceptance and
Mm-hmm.
mindfulness. You can have both of those.
Yeah.
But the whole impetus for the app and all that is, I got not tired, but it was just so many people of saying like, why weren't we taught these things in school?
Yes.
Why did
Yeah.
I not learn things about how to connect with awareness or control my attention or even name my emotions? Why is this not there? And it's like, well, yeah, that's a great point. But I'm similarly drawn to the skills and the tools. And so the basic ones, and then something like, let's say, ACT. How do you actually embody it and experience it? So this might be a nice segue. I have in
Mm-hmm.
front of me like the evidence-based treatments that you are trained in.
Uh-huh.
Whether or not you inspired me, I think you must have, but I think we both like to be trained in kind of like all the things. And I
That's
think
right.
you have more things right now than I do. So, what are all the things that you are, when you think about your education and the training you've
Mm-hmm.
done? Yeah, what are those? And yeah, whatever you want to say about all those
Sure.
treatments.
I'll first say broadly,
Hmm.
sometimes I do feel like that person, that musician who has like the guitar and the foot drum and the harmonica in their mouth, and
Hmm.
uh, I think you have to be careful, right, that it doesn't feel cluttered or incoherent. But I will say, when you learn a new approach, it does for a while, right? It
Yeah.
There's this feeling of like, oh, how do I do this fluidly, and how does it fit in with the existing frameworks I have? But I think it's also very comforting when it does, right? When there is a larger coherent framework. And just to give an example of that. So,
Yeah.
I started my training with dialectical behavior therapy and then got a lot of training subsequently in acceptance and commitment therapy. And more recently, I'm getting in-depth training in radically open DBT. And, I think there's a shared foundation. And that shared foundation, I would say, involves, they use slightly different words, right?
Mm-hmm.
In DBT, you might hear like radical acceptance. In ACT, you might hear being open, aware, and engaged.
Yeah.
And there's a book that just came out. It's called Say Yes to Life. And have you heard of it?
I haven't, no.
Okay, just came out. It's written by Viktor Frankl. And it was the speech he gave shortly after getting released from a concentration camp. And he was giving it to a group of professors. And he was talking about things that I thought, oh my gosh, you must have written this last week, because, he was just saying the chaos of the world and the insecurity. And we have this recent history where the nuclear weapon was used and our souls are bombed out. Like, everyone's scared. And who knows what future, there was the Holocaust that occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, okay, what do we need in the treatment? We need these three things. And they map so well onto these other approaches. For me, it's like, okay, there is coherence. And the three things were, one, we need to learn how to find meaning in loving, right? Two, we need to learn how to find meaning in suffering. And then three, we need to be able to find meaning in our actions. And again, that would fit neatly into an ACT book. It would fit into an RO-DBT book, right?
It's the thing I love so much is, out of all these trainings like cognitive behavioral therapy, the PTSD versions, CPT, PE, and then you get into third wave, DBT, ACT. We're using different words for kind of the same flavor of things, but what you're pointing to is what I've seen more in with ACT is like these core processes.
Yes.
When you go down to the roots of what's actually happening and you think about Viktor Frankl and like Man's Search for Meaning is, the kind of foundation there that I'm familiar with, but the concept of meaning in that really points to something like values, right? Yes. If you know what is meaningful, the life you want to live, how you want to be remembered, there's a lot of the goals, the things that you can do, but without that, let's say, compass direction, right? It can feel so disorganized and chaotic. But when you go down to the fundamental things that all of us humans are dealing with, so meaning and loving and suffering and our actions, it sounds simple, but usually in my experience, the more simple it can be, the more profound the implications.
Yes. Yes. And I think about that. I feel like, everybody has their own threshold, but I feel like more recently, my threshold for distractions and competing stimulation has gotten maxed out, right? Where it feels like, gosh, there's too much to track in this world. And so as a therapist, being able to, like, when I'm feeling lost, lean back into like, all right, if I don't know exactly what to do with all this content, at least what direction do we want to head in, right? One of these core,
And so much for me, it's, again, not kind of seeking out to have therapy be the thing like for ourselves, but it's really interesting, at least in my own case, as I went through training, just to figure out how relevant this stuff was to my daily life.
Yeah.
So again, this just came to mind. I don't know if you remember this, but I think it was my first DBT meeting that I was in. It was around the big table at UCBT, and I had my laptop out. Okay.
I do.
Furiously taking notes. So I'll just ask you, what do you remember about that? Because I remember it like it was yesterday.
Okay, so clearly there's still some like stored somatic
memory. No, but it's like in the best possible way.
Yeah.
So This was a pattern that I had and that I still find myself in, which is I need to be the one. It's either perfection or I can't forget. And I was just frantically typing to not miss anything, all this wisdom being thrown around. And then you stopped the group. Hey, everyone, can we just take a moment? Brian, I'm noticing, you're typing on your laptop. Can you kind of explain what's going on? And it was deer in the headlights writ large. I had no idea what to say, but it was such an experience. Like, there's a reason I still remember that.
Yeah.
And that kind of set the foundation for mindfulness for me. Like, can I be in the moment? Can I be okay to put down, let's say, this identification with what my mind is telling me I need to be doing? And can I just be with this group of professionals talking about helping people not suffer? And that it continues to come to mind if I find myself in session or in a conversation like this distracted. I guess that's a long way of saying these core principles. It's been so interesting just to see how life-changing they've been when we take that from our training and, let's say, our clinical work, and we apply it to our lives.
To jump in there, I'm imagining, this gets at sort of the honesty piece. I'm imagining, knowing myself, I was likely sitting there saying, should I say something? Should I not say something? He puts a lot of pressure on himself. Is that going to put him on the spot? And so I think this is a beautiful example of that probably created some discomfort in you that was worthwhile, right?
It was so uncomfortable. I was just getting to know these people, right? But not even in retrospect, like that very day, I remember thinking and I probably said in supervision, I probably thanked you a lot for doing that, because you could have, talking about honesty and authenticity, it would have been, I have to assume, so much easier for you not to say anything, to let me keep clacking away and to not slow things down. But because of that, it has ripple effects to how I am as a parent, how I am with Megan and my family, how I am as a clinician. And you did that for me because you were willing to experience maybe a little discomfort and to be open and honest. Life-changing, honestly, life-changing.
Yeah, that is what I think is so important about the sort of practice of honesty that you are highlighting in the work you're doing. I think it's actually, as time passes, becoming more and more revolutionary, like more and more counterculture, where if we just follow the current of the norms, it is these polite, more passive ways, right? Like I'm thinking about my daughter and all of these hidden meaning in text messages, right? For example, if you say, hey, we should go do this, but you don't add dates, that might mean something. Or if the person says, yeah, but they don't follow up, that also means something. And I'm just thinking, well, what if we just say it? What if we just,
And the nuance here of the way, and especially talking to a lot of the researchers who are doing this work with honesty and authenticity, just the complexity of it's not just the brutal truth of whatever's coming up for you, but there's the focus on intention. Why am I saying this? The nuance of how we communicate it. When do we communicate it? And so much for me is, again, it's anchored to values. Why is it for compassion? Am I trying to foster understanding? And if I'm very confident that I'm doing it for the reasons that are in line with the life I want, it's kind of hard to regret saying that thing in the moment. And the cool thing is, if you do and you make a mistake, you can honestly apologize. That wasn't my intention, and you can learn from that, right?
Right. I mean, I think that is the skill-based part of it that kind of ebbs and flows. I've, in the last few weeks, had to have a lot of conversations where I accurately predicted this other person is going to feel upset at what I'm saying. And even, there's that internal resistance I feel, especially when it's not fueled by anger. I think when it's fueled by anger, kind of what you're alluding to, that sort of it opens the floodgates, and then perhaps there's more regret. But I don't like it to be fueled there, right? Hopefully it's coming, like you said, from other values. One thing, this is a tiny example, but it's in RO-DBT. One way that feedback is given is through a tease. right? And I've actually really begun to love that because I tease the people who are in my circle and who I care about. And again, it's a skill because it can certainly go wrong. And then when it does go wrong, there's always that, oh, do you know what I meant when I teased you about that, what I was trying to do? But yeah, I don't know. Me, however many years later, Brian, probably would have teased you. Would have been like, you better get everything down there, Brian. You better get everything we say in that little computer. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But a similar message though, right? Like calling attention to, and for me, it was an invitation, however it was delivered, to really reflect on, well, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And what I realized, like, this is really taking away from my experience here. And then what must the other people think? They're trying to communicate, and you have me like a stenographer in a courtroom trying not to miss anything. It's like, it gave me permission to kind of relax and just to connect with what's happening in the present. It was mindfulness before I knew what mindfulness basically was, right?
Right.
And yeah. Well, I mean, so for you, like I wanted to, because there's so many things and so many principles and all these treatments and all the training that you've had. What are some of the things where, not just impactful to you as a psychologist, but how has this then kind of translated into your daily life, the things that have been really meaningful and, life-changing for you, if anything?
Yeah. I was recently on a hike with my husband, and I was sharing like these new insights that I had around acceptance and opening up and being receptive to what life hands you, as opposed to control freak me trying to pave my path just how I think it needs to go. And he said, Ashley, you've been saying the same new insight for years, right? And like the image that came to mind was, it's almost like this corn maze, and you just you're like, I'm going to get out of the center and I'm going to go here, and that takes you back to the center. And so that is something that, when we talk about treatment, and I've been in therapy, I am in therapy periodically, you are sometimes relearning the same lesson on a deeper way. And I do think, I love the focus of evidence-based treatments, and the time-limited nature, I think, gives them structure and intensity to it. But I don't think that it's meant to communicate 6 to 12 sessions of ACT helps you then know life fully, right? Or be enlightened.
Yeah.
I keep re-encountering it with a new developmental lens. So I don't know if you relate with this, but now that I'm in my 40s, some of that overwork, rally, build, push, achievement has tapered off a little bit. And then there's a question of like, okay, now there's a space, now what? Right? Especially if some of the things you thought you were going to build, you're not going to build. And so that was a re-invitation recently to be like, can you open up to what your life is? If you're not using hope as like, oh, but I'm going to build this. Oh, I'm going to go vacation here. Can you open up to this? And sometimes the answer for me is like, no, I cannot. But then you know it. Then you know you're tantruming, right? Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah.
I mean, you're pointing to the difference between like kind of tethering your well-being to an outcome versus a value, right?
Exactly.
I wanted to build this thing, and that's maybe not going to happen. But then if I asked you, well, why did you want to build that thing? Right?
Yes.
Why do you want to go on that vacation? What comes up?
If you could have been there with me, Brian, we would have shortcutted right there.
That would have been my repayment, my gift to you for the insight you gave me around that DBT table. Yeah. But that's such a huge part for me too, and I didn't have that lens either of like, oh, a goal can be checked off of a list, right? I want to graduate from this program. Cool. Well, you've done that, and now what? So much of my life was the goalpost kept moving, but I didn't have that anchor of why was I doing it? Why did it matter? And that's the cool thing about the corn maze and circling back is, well, that's almost inevitable if we're talking about, let's say, your thing about openness and acceptance. When are you going to be done with that?
Right? Never.
Never. And
Yeah.
so it's this re-experiencing, and for me, it's this ever deepening
Yeah.
of something like, let's say, mindfulness or acceptance or getting in touch with emotions and their function. Like, if we're hitting on values, by definition, we're never done, but are we growing? Are our insights deepening? And then what the hell are we going to do with that?
Yes.
And it sounds like you're continuing to do that with something like acceptance.
Right, because I forget and then I remember and I forget.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's often because the messaging we're getting is so counter acceptance. It's so change oriented consumerism
Mm-hmm.
that it's easy to get lost in it, right? When you were saying that, it reminded me of this interaction I had at an ACT training where Kelly Wilson was teaching it, and he's
Yeah.
amazing and very in a heartfelt way embodies ACT and values. And he was doing this like role play with me, and I was doing my hamster wheeling, which is like sounds like the words don't matter, but it's a yeah, but right. It's that
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to push an agenda, and he said, and I had the receptivity in the moment to handle this. This is sometimes a very bad idea, I'm sure, with some. But he said, "Shut up, and sit still, Ashley. Shut up and sit still. I'm going to do it too, and we're going to do it for 20 seconds."
Mm-hmm.
And when I shut up and I sat still, I just felt this um, like a storm of energy inside of me, just like unfurling and flowing. And then it went down. Right. And then when I opened my mouth, I was like, oh, I guess I don't need to explain all this stuff. Oh, that was a big like wake up call. Like this doesn't have to be fixed through talking it out.
I mean, you're underlining like such a theme in my life too of getting lost in let's explain it, let's analyze it, let's pick it apart, and then can you just shut up? Right? The way I describe it, like, can I get out of the way?
Yeah.
Right? Can I, actually just be still? Sometimes I describe it as letting the snow globe settle.
Yeah.
Like we're so agitated, but we can't see our environment. Can we give ourselves permission to shut up a little bit, to be a little still? And then all of a sudden, that clarity, it sounds like for you, of, oh, maybe we don't need to talk it out.
Yeah. And I think there's not really a lot of social precedence for it. So for
Mm,
me, who loves to kind of fit in and be liked, and I know I'm not alone in that, it kind of feels like a weirdo thing to do, especially I'm just free forming stories, but
yeah.
we I was traveling recently and I lost my carry-on bag. I left it somewhere in an airport and it was taken, and I had all my favorite things in it, my favorite journal, my favorite t-shirt from 20 years ago, everything. And I was so upset, and I was like, okay, Ashley, put it into practice. um Feel what you're feeling right now. Don't stuff it away. Don't take care of things on your to-do list. Just be with what's unfolding. And I was like, I want to cry. So I was crying in the airport, which for me, I've been trained, don't cry.
Mm-hmm.
And people got really uncomfortable. And so I just want to highlight that doing this sometimes means that you're going to stand out a little bit and people
Yeah.
not get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were doing that though, I mean, because there's often, is this the right time? Is this
Yeah.
the right place? You
Mhm.
weren't suppressing, you weren't avoiding, you were opening up, validating those emotions. How did it go though? Other people might have been a bit uncomfortable.
Mhm.
What happened? Because you allowed yourself to be sad and all those emotions.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is the beautiful thing that you have to learn experientially, because I've been told it and I've told people it so many times of
Yeah.
that no feeling is final. It it does feel huge when it comes on, and it does feel like it needs to be controlled and managed, and um but you hurt, and then it's almost like I'm surprised each time. It does attenuate. And maybe you'll hurt again more. I'm still annoyed every time I'm looking for something that I really liked that is now gone.
Yeah.
Um, but I think there was also that you said, around validating. it's also communicating something to myself of you don't have to hide. Like, this isn't shameful to be hurting. Even if people may want to say, are you okay? Do you need something? What should you do? I'm like, no, I don't need anything. I'm just being here hurting.
Yeah.
And I'm okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What just came to mind as you were saying that, like, yeah, my dad died a couple months ago, and it was just interesting grief and how it comes in waves. Like, you hear things like that, but then as, it wasn't in my family, but the boys don't cry, stiff upper lip, suck it up, like, stiff upper lip. But just to have my family come together in that way, and people like, are you okay? Do you need anything? And I didn't need anything except for just to give myself permission to feel all these things.
Yes.
And the one thing, and my mom's like, do you want this from your dad? Like, clothing. I didn't want anything, but I did want his aftershave. Because I still have it upstairs, and it's not a torturous thing, but like occasionally I'll just smell that and it reminds me of him, and I can just grieve and I have these memories, but I'm not suppressing, I'm not avoiding. And for me, putting that into practice of, let's say, acceptance or non-avoidance of these uncomfortable experiences, I've found again and again, it gives kind of a meaning and a poignancy to these experiences where it's not the expectation of you'll get over it or you need to let it go, but it can be meaningful and it can be sad. And that the other side of that is, well, I had so much love for him, right?
Yeah.
You can be frustrated and upset about losing these things in the airport, but it's not coming out in weird ways for your husband or your daughter. It's like you dealt with it. Maybe some people felt a little bit uncomfortable, but okay, that's an emotion and you allowed yourself to feel it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I love that example. It reminds me, what it makes me think about is connection. And I think that a lot of therapies, of these third wave therapies, they at least touch on connection. Radically Open DBT centers it and says, look, being a human's always been hard. As long as you have a tribe or a group of loving humans who have your back, you can get through almost everything, right? But you need the skills to build this group. And I would argue it's hard as it has ever been, right? In that I spent a lot of time thinking about what causes loneliness and how we stay connected, especially on the heels of the pandemic. And especially on the heels of, like, so many of our services are provided through these businesses now, right? If I need food, I order on my phone, Amazon brings me my things. Like, I don't need to ask for many favors. I kind of like that. Part of me, my self-reliance side loves it. But I also was noticing, like, gosh, my friends aren't really asking me for much. And values-wise, like, I actually do want to be that human that they would call at 2 a.m. and that they say, I need someone to take me to the ER. Or I need someone to sit with me in the ER, just make me feel less alone. And I was listening to someone talk about that, the difference between sort of a good friend, right? And a truly, like, trusted confidant and good company, like someone who's good to have around, easy energy, that doesn't place many demands. And that really made me reflect that, I think I want good friends. Like, I want the hard shit. Not just the people who are easygoing and who, if you cancel on them or they can cancel on you and it's okay. Right.
It's, so much of when I think back on my life, like, what are the things that were most meaningful? If you think back on your life, what are you most proud of doing or accomplishing? Find me one of those things where it was totally easy, right? Yeah. No difficulty at all. It is the other side of the coin of, for those things that are truly meaningful, it's an unfolding lesson I keep learning, but if we're not putting ourselves out there, if we're not willing to maybe have a difficult conversation or to be open or authentic, especially when it's not convenient to be that way, if we're not taking chances within reason, right? We're not growing, we're not learning. And yeah, it definitely sounds like that's what you would want. That's what I want too, right? And as I'm saying it, it's like, well, that sounds great for you, but I do telehealth from home. And so getting out among the other human beings and trying to make these connections. I'm 39, I'll be 40 this year. We have 4 young kids. I need to start practicing more of that, I think, I have my existing connections, but going out and doing that more in the real world, quote unquote, it's more and more challenging because, like you're saying, we don't need to do that anymore. We can connect in all these other ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what I liked what you were just saying there is that, and a lot of these approaches teach that, is that it must be contextual, right? Like, it would be unfair to say that I'm arguing, just run at all the hard stuff. Just run straight at and confront everything that hurts.
Right.
That would be, nobody wants that life, right?
No.
But I think that is what creates so much humility, is that once it becomes contextual, it becomes more nuanced and harder to explain. I can't give you these hard and fast rules as a therapist or receiving therapy, right?
Yeah.
And then we're gonna fuck it up, right?
Yes, we are.
Sometimes.
And hopefully we will learn from that.
Yeah.
And again, I go back, Julia, who I trained with, Julia Harris, Dr. Julia Harris now. She always would give me so much grief because I would come back to values so much. She would just laugh. She's like, values again? But like, for me, there's a couple of core things. Mindfulness was one. So I could just like you said with the laptop, like I could connect with now and anxiety and worry. But the other thing was actually thinking about what matters. And so not slamming into the brick wall over and over for the sake of I do hard stuff.
Yeah.
But if it matters to you.
Yeah.
If you can answer the question, why are you doing this? And it gets to a point where it's just self-justifying because I don't know, it just is. It's meaningful. It matters. Then you bang away at that wall, right? Or you go over that hurdle, but that's the context of it, is something for you that might totally not be worth it for me. But it depends on, what we care about, and can we kind of allow different people to have different values, different goals, and to be just supportive and, but without having that clarity, I was kind of flying blind for the vast majority of my life. Yeah.
Yeah. And that just speaks to, I think, the flexibility. What it reminded me of is like, mindfulness meditation and sort of formally sitting meditation. We have like a respectful but a fluctuating relationship. And I used to be really embarrassed of that because, many of these approaches as therapists, we need to have a sitting practice, or we need to have some form of mindfulness practice. And I guess what I've realized is that there are some points in my life where it just hasn't called to me, and then other points where it has. But I think, and that's that contextual flexibility, maybe. These days, it might be more organically, I'm really upset, let me just freeze and feel. Because for some reason right now, sitting on a cushion, I don't want to do it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also, well, what is the point? Like, what's the function of actually formal practice? Well, for me, it was so much about, wow, just realizing how out of control my mind was, right?
Yes.
It was all over the place. And then, well, can we focus a spotlight somewhere, let's say on the breath, or move it through the body? But then when you start opening it up to more choiceless awareness, okay, I'm noticing all these things. And if you really back it up to awareness itself, this is self as context and act. And, I'm not even any of these contents. I'm just the awareness of them. Well, then formal practice is fine. But I found myself, just, it sounds like with you, if formal practice and sitting isn't calling to you, the point for me is, can we just be mindful? Can we be aware? And much more impactful, like in this moment right now, can I connect with just this awareness, this beingness? The answer is yes. And if so, that's kind of the point, because once we open our eyes on the cushion, oh shit, like we have all this stuff now. can you bring that wisdom and those kind of tools in the toolbox to your daily life, including this next presenting moment, right?
Yes. I mean, we got to keep having these talks, Brian. These are good for
Yes,
me.
I know.
The sitting meditation, I think what I'm realizing as you're talking, for me, it had become you have to sit before you, on your to-do list before you get the other stuff done. So the function of it had changed for me. It was like, you're in trouble. You're not checking the box. And maybe there was this natural resistance of like, no, that's not what this is supposed to be. Right. But I love what you're bringing up to the selfless context piece, because there's so much, it feels like there's so many spotlights on our identities and who we are and who we aren't. And I think that has its place and importance. But gosh, it's liberating, right? To be able to sit in a moment and say, I'm not any of these. I'm not my PhD. I'm not my motherhood. I'm not that embarrassing thing I said yesterday. I'm just a bunch of atoms who have somehow has consciousness that Sam Harris and all these brilliant people haven't figured out where that came from. Weird, right?
And the call to explain it, it's by definition, like when I talked to Steve Hayes about this, like trying to describe this thing that fundamentally it's not a thing. That's why in these contexts, it's no thing, right? It's the emptiness of awareness. Well, it's empty of content because it's the context. So to your point of, you can really only experience and then fumble around to try to describe things like it's boundless and timeless and empty, and you're getting the flavor of it. But the fundamental thing, I think, clinically and in my personal life is, can we be aware of that next thought and, oh, I'm not that, or I am not this persona that these, degrees on the wall are saying I am something. Yes, I can be a psychologist, I can be a husband, I can be a father, I can be a son. But if I'm not needing to identify with those and I have something now to put on a show, I can just simply allow myself to be here, open with you in this conversation. Like even right now, I can just feel there's this unburdening, right? The pressure. We can just be here and have a conversation that unfortunately is going way, way, way too quickly for. So I don't want to keep us past the time that we have, but I am curious, and maybe this would be for another time. How has this stuff impacted you as a parent?
Oh goodness.
I know.
Okay. My mind is going through so many examples, but okay. Well, this is something that happened recently. My kiddos, they were trying out for soccer, and I have an older daughter and a younger son. So my daughter's an adolescent and my son's younger. And it's an interesting kind of re-experiencing of her own childhood, because I played competitive soccer from a very young age under a lot of pressure. And so and I have such, I get annoyed with them and whatnot, of course, but I just have such deep love for them. And so, oh goodness. I mean, that's like the most cliched thing ever. It's but I have so much compassion to see them. And so I'm watching them try out, and my son has this unself-conscious, earnest, 100% effort in this tryout. Even when he falls on his face or he like whiffs the ball completely. And then my daughter, who's now kind of, I guess, absorbed these messages around being cool and not trying too hard and like almost like pushing back a little bit, right? Protecting the vulnerability of, hey, everybody, I'm showing you my absolute best. So if it fails, oh my gosh, that was my best. Like when my son winds up to kick the ball and score, instead he just falls. And so when we talk about as a parent, there's something I want to try to, like that little flame I want to keep alive that my son was showing of like, I'm going to be earnest. You know what I mean? Even if it's a little humiliating. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is that reliving in my experience too. And you just see when there's not this preoccupation with other things except for what they're doing, they're trying, they're authentic, they're earnest. For me, how do I not stamp that out? Like, how can I foster it and support it? And yeah, the whole parenthood thing, like if I thought I was learning things before, like you apply that to now these ages. With us, it's age 2, 4, 6, and 8.
Mm-hmm.
It's an endless kind of, training ground for applying these skills and tools. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
nowhere near where, obviously it'll end up, but it's been amazing and continues to be amazing.
But
Yeah.
that makes me so hopeful, Brian. I think, and I won't speak for you, but I mean, they may have a tougher world that they're facing, but I feel like they're equipped with a greater sense of awareness and flexibility, maybe.
Hmm.
So, because they teach us, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just, anyway.
Well, and the fact not only they teach us, but I do think this now movement to get things like mindfulness into
Mm-hmm.
elementary schools and with these evidence-based treatments that these insights have been around literally for thousands of years, but I never heard about them growing up, right?
Yes.
And so having the kind of honor to both of us stumbling ass backwards into these kind of therapies, for me, the just a big values-based goal that I have is how can I kind of help get this out there to people who might otherwise not have heard about this. And it's not a substitute for assessment and treatment, but there are these core nuggets that if I would have had, let's say, an app like
Mm-hmm.
this or an interview like this, that would have been really nice for
Yes.
me. And so thinking about our kiddos growing up, and so having you and, just the amazing clinician, person, human that you are, to be able to have your voice, and just to have you there as a resource for people who need your help. It's incredible. And again, Ashley, I'm just so grateful and thankful that I had the great fortune to have met you and that you would take so much time to chat today. And I know we haven't even probably scratched the surface. So,
I want to underscore what you're saying around, teaching children. And it is beautiful to see that moving into some of the curriculum. My kiddos come home with like an emotional thermometer, right?
right.
Like that, where when they rate where they are. And oh my gosh, I was not in that framework whatsoever at the time. I mean, I think that more kiddos innately know this idea that emotions and thoughts are suggestions, right?
Mm.
And that counts for a lot, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It
Oh,
gets you
yeah.
pretty far if you realize that.
If you realize I'm not angry, but I'm noticing anger, this is information to motivate behavior rather than it's just the truth about what
Yeah.
you are. And yeah, and as you were talking, there I'm channeling my old version of myself who might have rolled their eyes at an emotional thermometer. It seems like
Mm-hmm.
lovey-dovey,
Uh-huh.
but the science, the empirical basis that this is derived from, the reason this is so meaningful and important for me, and the reason I love this training is a very pragmatic reason. It's because it works,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not for, let's say, everybody, but this is not just, hey, think positive thoughts. There's a rigor and an empiricism to this. And trying this stuff out, right? Running this experiment in your daily life to see what happens. For some reason, that came to my mind. Like, if
Yes.
there's people who are eye rolling,
Yeah.
there's a lot to this kind of stuff, right?
Right. And I do love that point that you're right. We are in the age where people are constructing these modalities and packages and trainings, and they have these really beautiful wrappers, but
Mm-hmm.
on the outside, right? They look so well marketed. But yeah, if it doesn't have the roots, if it doesn't have empirical roots, or at least a sense of curiosity about itself, like, do I really work?
Right.
What is actually happening when I? Then I think we
Yeah.
have an issue. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we agree with that. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say you can bring me back anytime if if I'm invited.
Okay.
I love having these discussions, and I'm just so excited about what you're building, and I want to support it however I can.
Perfect. Well, to kind of end there before we wrap up, if listeners want to, learn more about you, either get in touch with you or just learn more, where would you kind of point them towards? Website, social media, anything like that?
Yeah, I would say go to greenwellpsychology.com. I've kept it mostly to email in terms of my low social media knowledge. So, but yeah, find me there.
Cool. All right, Ashley. Well, once again, thank you so much for everything, being the person you are. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.